It's fine. It's not fine. Uh, Other topic, European versus American trains, because I think there's a huge difference between them, and I think on both sides it has its own ups and downs, but overall I think the European train experience is better a bit, because usually passengers give review of traveling with trains, and I just kind of looked around on the internet about some videos of Amtrak, and usually these this kind of trans-American expresses, like going through hello, usually these Amtrak consists going through the whole continent, like from south to north or from east to west. Their train I don't know, I kind of like them, but at the same time it's just there are some features that I don't know, it's just strange. Like I remember when I first saw that the Amtrak's coaches have toilet inside the cabin where the people usually sleep together. I don't know, it was kind of funny, to be honest. Like yeah, but the idea of having panorama coaches where you can just take a look. American network is definitely different because passenger rail is not profitable, but freight is still huge. American freight rail companies are the most profitable. I mean, I think it's true for most of the rail network. Just think about it. Like usually passenger trains are always a loss. Like you have to maintain them, you have to keep up the conditions and make them work every day, clean them, and all these utilities cost so much money. And if you have a buffet coach or a dining car, you have to refuel the water tanks, you have to refill the meals, and you have to refill the soda machine and the fridges. So yeah, I think passenger trains will be always a loss, speaking of income. But at the same time, usually European train companies like Deutsche Bahn, Poland's PKP or PKP as they say, or České dráhy, which is the not Czechoslovak, it's the Czech railway network. All of them has a cargo division, and I just realized that the American trains, like the cargo trains, are a completely different company than usually the passenger trains. Like the passenger train companies are a separate company from any kind of cargo train companies, except there is one line that's run by BNSF, but it really shows because they don't care about it that much. So their stations are look terrible, like dirty, and just almost falling apart. But usually in European trains we have some private cargo company, but at the same time the national railway who makes these passenger trains like Deutsche Bahn or ÖBB, which is the Austrian railway, or yeah, like PKP in Poland, or maybe ZSSK? GSSK? I don't know which one is, like the Slovakian railway. They have also a cargo division, so that's why they can make their company profitable, because yeah, the freight railroads here have been beating the trucks at their own game because unlike most countries, large industries are only customer, but even small local ships use the railroads for freight. For example, a store near my house still gets goods shipped by rail, so CSX built a track of the main line down the side street right to their back door. Okay, that's amazing. That's why I'm amazed with the cargo trains in America. And the other thing that you know just drops my jaw, like how long these and how heavy these cargo trains can be. And there is a difference between the European and the American freight train business model. Like in America, the freight trains usually works like the passenger trains. It sounds strange, but at the same time, they usually just kind of make a timetable for different freight trains. And if you want to transport your goods or some of your cargo, you just kind of buy a ticket and kind of rent a cargo car or a cargo carriage for your own. Yeah, and it's much. So yeah, you just kind of rent the carriage, and you rent and they transport your goods from A to B. Meanwhile, in Europe, usually when it comes to freight train, they don't just advertise these kind of freight trains like in timetables. Usually, they make some negotiation between some private or some national cargo company, and usually they make a contract between the company they choose to transport their goods and the company who makes the goods or wants some minerals, and usually they transport their goods periodically. Like, so it's not just like okay, this train will depart. Oops, should have stopped here. So it's usually not like you should just kind of buy a ticket with okay, I messed up. Like kind of buy a ticket for the train. Usually they just sign some contracts between the company and they transport for that company only periodically. So yeah, that's the big difference between European and American cargo trains, and that's why I think American trains are more profitable because usually there are huge sidings where they usually decouple the freight cars or freight carriages at different points of the line and continue without the decoupled carriage. Meanwhile, in Europe, we usually make point-to-point cargo trains. So sometimes it works like in America, so that's why sometimes you can see some mixed freight trains. But usually, like most of the time, we transport goods from point to point, so we don't attach or detach cargo trains together, or we don't separate cargo trains. The other reason why passenger trains are suffering is that companies here are allowed to own the very track they run on, so they can have other railroads pay for usage of their lines. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about right now. That the other problem that in America, that mostly the tracks are owned by private cargo companies. Meanwhile, in Europe, most of the rails are owned by the national rail company, or yeah, and that's why the passenger trains can work better because, of course, it's the national railway who makes most of the passenger trains. Of course, private companies just started to appear, like RegioJet, But anyway, so yeah, usually passenger trains are run by the national railway, and Amtrak is also true for uh, for America, because Amtrak is technically a national railway company. But at the same time, it's funny that, as I know correctly, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, the Union Pacific is national company either. Is the Northeast Corridor, which owned by Amtrak. The large commuter rail companies are also. Yeah. That's why Amtrak can work fine there. But when it comes to the East-West Coast line, it's not so. I like how Americans complain about that they have only 4 or 5 tracks between the West and the East Coast, but it's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue, I think, that all of these tracks are owned by CSX or Union Pacific, which is kind of funny because the Union Pacific is technically a national cargo train company. Meanwhile, the Amtrak is a national passenger train company, and still they usually mess with Amtrak's train on their line. And I think if passenger trains had more priority on these tracks than cargo trains, maybe the experience with passenger trains would be better on the East and West Coast line, like the lines between the East and West Coast. And I like how they keep some breaks during the road, because they have to wait for another freight train that has its own timetable, and they have to let it go because it has priority. So sometimes they take 15 or even up to maybe half an hour breaks. So yeah, but there are 6 major companies here: Union Pacific, BNSF West, NSN, CSX in the East, and then Canadian Pacific and Canadian National have tracks. Oh, okay, it's cool. I never knew that even Canadian railways have their own network in North America. But I think Amtrak is trying really hard to improve their experience with traveling them, but at the same time they sometimes failing because of these problems, because the lack of priority on the tracks. And I think there should be kinda rework on the Union Pacific lines, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it's a national cargo company, so the National Cargo Railway Company, and I think the state should just rethink its model of passenger trains on Union Pacific lines. I don't say that it would be better if Amtrak owned these tracks, but at the same time I think maybe more rails would be fine, like we usually do it in Europe. Like most of the modern train companies or like on bigger rail networks, usually passenger trains have priority, or usually there are 4 tracks on the main line, or even up to 5, and 2 of them is the high speed rail, and the other 3 is for these regional bands, like these local trains, transporting the people between the agglomeration and the major city, these commuter rails. And that was designed by cross-border trains. Ah, okay. Yeah. I mean, I usually, when I see American trains, or like not from the USA but on the continent, they almost look the same, or they always look the same because they are made by General Electric. But yeah, so okay, I lost where I finished my sentence. Let me yeah. So okay. So yeah. So in Europe we have separate tracks for freight trains usually, and when we don't, usually freight trains wait until later hours, like in the evening or even until the night, because they don't have priority and they just wait at a huge siding of a station, and freight trains usually just operates. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, sorry. My grandma intruded the house. Okay, anyway, so yeah, back to American trains. Yeah, they yeah. Speaking of, most of the passenger locomotives owned by Amtrak are actually built by GE or EMD and often existing freight engine or design modifier for passenger service, or have stark similarities to freight units that are extremely reliable, but they are noisy at the same. Yeah. Um. Usually American. Or no, just talking about diesel electric locomotives in common. I don't know why, but they are usually more reliable than other diesel trains like diesel hydraulics. I remember when there was a test from Europeans, like they sent a diesel hydraulic train for America just to test it, and they realized that it's just not going to work because it requires more maintenance than the diesel electric ones. So yeah. Yeah. Also, maybe some of the Americans don't know, because they usually, I don't know, kind of live in the isolated way of thinking that everything that is being made in America is actually American. But there are some locomotives in the USA that's actually European. Like on the New Jersey Transit, the NG46 is technically Bombardier trucks, or maybe the BR 101, but it's a European, but technically it's a European locomotive. They just changed the handle like the lever handles on the dashboard and some of its buttons and switches, but you can see it's the regular dashboard used in Europe around train manufacturers. And also the new Amtrak diesel electric locomotive is new charges in this. Yep. The ECS 64 is technically a Vectron. Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, so and also the Amtrak Sacela Express, the first one, is technically a TGV. Just take a look at the side of a TGV duplex, like the locomotive, and take a look at the side of the SLR Express. It's technically a TGV. Even the doors where you can enter the driver's cabin are the same on both trains. Only the nose section, the front section of the locomotives are actually different. And it's quite funny because I know that they tested a Siemens high-speed train, like the ICE-1, and they tested another, I think maybe it was Bombardier. I know that there was another high-speed train that they tried for testing, and they decided to buy a French train. So they tested the no, it was the Pendolino. Sorry. So they tested the Pendolino and they tested the ICE one, an Italian and a German train, and then they decided to buy the French TGV. I think foreign design for passenger service are probably the best picks to for freight. I don't really see any foreign stuff beating GE and EMD. Yeah, and it's quite funny how popular these freight locomotives. Even it was funny when Yugoslavia decided to buy some American freight locomotives, and yeah, their nickname is Kennedy because they are American, and they built in the era of Kennedy, and I don't know how the leadership could get away with it, buying American trains meanwhile being a Soviet Union member. So yeah, it was quite funny, and also Hungarians did the same. Like they bought the Nohab, which is technically a Sweden locomotive, and it's licensed by an American diesel electric locomotive. So and I know the Soviet leadership were really angry about it, that Soviet nations buying trains from America and from the Western world. So they started to research their own diesel electric vehicles, and sometimes it was better and sometimes it was worse than the Western parts, like the Western counterparts. So yeah, but also I think the cargo train is why the cargo trains are better than like the American ones, better than the European ones, because they can be longer. Like the physical limitation of how many carriage you can couple is less than on European train. Yeah, I also see them as a stopgap for passenger services. Yes, they are noisy and slow, but out of shift reliable engine. Yeah, and it's funny how they could manage to make a two-stroke diesel engine for this job. And the other thing that amazes me, that they can use locomotives on both sides of the train, like there are 4 locomotives at the front of the train, and there are 2 or 3 or even 4 at the end of the train, and they work together because they are connected through radio connection, like on antennas and everything. And I didn't know how they work when the train goes into the tunnel, and turns out that they built repeaters inside of the tunnel. So when a signal is being outputted, like there is a signal output, the repeater sends these signals through the whole tunnel, and every locomotive that is being in receiver mode, they just take the sign and do the same as the leader locomotive. So yeah, it's amazing. In Europe we have only cable connection between the control cab cars and the locomotive. So we usually don't use radio connection between locomotives. They're long and heavy freight trains. Most for the driver. Yep, I know, but usually they use, I think it's RTC connection, I guess, maybe, but yeah. Also, I think that the train influence system and the whole regulation of American rails are kinda a weak spot, because usually on passenger trains there is ATB, no, it's ATC, sorry, and another train influence system, but usually on freight train rail networks, usually there is no train influence system, so that's why two people have to sit in the cab, because one of them are not driving. They are just, sounding the dead man alert for the train driver. Essential, there are not regulations at all, which is both good and bad. Yeah, that's why I think European trains are safer than the American ones, because even on the smallest sideline you have at least a train influence system that stops you when you run over a red signal. Sorry. So yeah, and in America, usually on freight lines there is no train influence system, except the other person who just looks over the train driver itself, like if he's dead or alive, or paying enough attention to the rail. So that's why two people have to sit in the cab of the freight trains usually. The structure of the American freight trains are usually stronger than the European ones. We usually calculate how much they can deform, like the nose of the train, and we also have a regulation for that. Like on the Siemens Electron, technically you can just push yourself away from the dashboard, and you have a higher survival chance with that. But it's amazing how hard and strong has to be an American locomotive structure, like how strong it has to be. And I think that maybe Europeans should take some features from Americans, but at the same time so many things should be taken from Europe to the American railways. And for me as a European, the train signaling system in America is kind of confusing. Like sometimes there are 3 different lights, and one of them is green and 2 of them are red, and that means you can pass by, and like, okay, what? So I just don't, sometimes I just don't understand the signaling system of Americans. Like in Europe we have green light, we have green and yellow, or green and orange, and we have double orange, and we have orange only, and we have red signals only, but not we don't combine the red and green signals together. Cab design only works for freight trains where you are getting constant bombarded from cars piling up, not one big crash. Ah, yeah, okay. Yeah, but at the same time you have higher survivability chance hitting a truck in an American locomotive than in a European. Like some older European locomotives couldn't handle a crash with a truck, and usually it was lethal for the train driver itself. Either the whole cabin just deformed that much that even the train driver couldn't survive. Usually it's a reflex for European train drivers that if something big and heavy in front of them, and they know that they are going to crash, just press the emergency brake button and run back to the engine room immediately, because you have a higher survivability chance in there than staying in the cab. Usually it's very true for older locomotives that they just didn't make calculations about the cab deforming. Okay, let me just give me a minute. Let me convert it into kilometer per hour. That's technically the same in Europe. in Europe, most of the freight trains run at least 70 miles per hour or 75. It's not a big deal. It depends on the freight train's mass. Like wait, let me convert the. Yeah, so usually freight trains go at 62 miles per hour in Europe, but it's usually heavy freight trains when you are transporting heavy cargoes around. When you can go at 75 miles per hour in Europe with freight trains, it's usually empty freight cars, or usually just some light cargo like cars or other lightweight cargo. So yeah, we still have. I think the train influence system across Europe is something that is also interesting. There's plenty of smaller railroads still exist hauling freight. Even heritage railroads do it because extra profit. Yep, yep. I don't know. I feel like America has uh kinda its culture with freight trains. Like I feel like it's a heritage thing at the same time. It's a cultural thing at the same time. I feel like the rail network in America is kind of religious about the freight trains, and that's okay because technically their freight trains are the ones who makes who make the country works and just roll in. So yeah, and I think America made a great job at this, like making the logistics system of freight trains. And also the fact that they usually build rails to even smaller shops who usually use the railway for their goods. I think it's just amazing. They just decide to build a sideline for small cities. And I don't know which railway is it, but I know that there are some freight rail network that just goes through small villages around coal mines. Like it just goes through the whole main street of the village. Good example is Strasbourg Railroad. They have 3 steam engine and 1 diesel. Their line has a whole bunch of farms in the area. Amtrak Keystone corridors. Every week they interchange and trade cars with Norfolk Southern train at the junction, and their strongest steam engine pulls the train to the main yard. Oh, okay. Okay, it's pretty cool. Okay, I was confused about Strasbourg because we have Strasbourg in Europe too. It just have an O in it. Like you type it like Strasbourg. I thought you were talking about European trains at first. Yeah, usually Heritage Railway does that here in Europe, like trading some museum locomotives and some carriages, but usually museum railways are on the same line as the main lines, so they don't have their own network completely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. That just makes sense. Like making some freight trains are always gives you profit because yeah, you don't like. I think the most financial advantage of freight trains compared to passenger trains is that you don't have to keep up so many utilities for freight trains, like yeah, as I said before, like cleaning the toilets, filling up the water tanks of carriages for the toilet, and cleaning the cars or coaches inside, and fixing the seats, and fixing the air condition, and paying the whole stuff to check the tickets, cook in the dining car, and serve the meals and the drinks in the dining car, and clean the windows. Oh, okay. Okay, noted. Sometimes I'm considering just, go to America, but for me the plane ticket costs so much that it's just like a lottery price. I mean, I don't say it's technically a lottery price, but yeah, it's expensive to fly to America or Japan. Like this two country I would definitely see, and just try out the public transportation in America, like just have some real experience if it's really that bad, or just people complaining about the usual stuff like in Europe. Because I don't know, usually when I go to foreign country or another city, usually the first thing I want to see is the public transport, because I want to check it out, how good is it, or how bad is it, like the price of the ticket, the vehicle fleet, especially the vehicle fleet. I'm usually interested about the vehicle fleet of transportation companies, because yeah, I'm kind of curious about vehicles, especially trains, buses, and subways, and trams, and like bigger public transportation vehicles. Except ships, I don't know. Ships are a bit boring for me, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know. Ships are just strange for me. Like, I don't know. Planes are more interesting for me. If I have to pick a transportation system that is not goes on the land. But yeah. Also the thing I wanted to say about freight trains, that in America you can go to East Coast freight is the best, and it's kind of anyway. Also the small freight railroads are must visit, super heavy. Visitors, they will let you get right along the track as long as they know you are aware enough. Ah, okay. Okay, yeah, I like how people are friendly in America. Like usually when I see some, kind of videos from from America, I like how people are way friendlier. Like they just, approach people with I don't know, with more peaceful attitude, I guess, than usually in Eastern Europe. Like I don't know, I feel like when in Eastern Europe you just try to get to know other, most people are friendly, but yeah, that is something I hear. Ah, okay. Yeah, I don't know, in Eastern Europe I feel like people sometimes are very, very grumpy at each other. And I remember when I worked at my workplace in dual education, people were so sour there that I don't know. I feel like they were just mad at the younger generation for no reason, and yeah, they can make internship and other younger employees' life more sour than their itself. So yeah, sometimes it can be really toxic environment in Eastern European workplaces. And usually it's not just the workplace, but sometimes it's the people themselves. So yeah, I don't know why, but that's just a thing. I remember when I was in Berlin this summer, I was just amazed how the tram drivers were more friendly than in my country. Like, I remember I was just taking a photo of the tram at the terminus and at the end station, and he just asked me in German if I want to see the dashboard of the tram, and I said I can't speak German, so yeah, he just changed to English, and yeah, we were talking all along during his post time and showed me some stuff inside the tram you usually don't see when you are just a regular passenger. Probably one of my biggest memories when I was going to record the tanker train pulled by a local railroad for about 50 miles. They invited me all of a sudden to ride along. I was worried about my car staying there, but they said they will be going back immediately with another set of races, so it worked out. Ah, okay. Okay, it's... Okay, I'm quite surprised you can just enter a train as a usual person. Like, usually in Europe, it's just prohibited to have people inside a cab without any kind of permission. Like, yeah, I was riding with one of my train driver friend twice, and on both occasion I had to take a permission from the railway company to, okay, hey, can I just ride along with him and just see how things works usually, and how, you know, what is the site of a train driver. Like, I don't know if you have regulation for that in America, or they just don't they just don't give a heck about it, but yeah, it's just amazing how people are just, you know, more friendly than in the Western world than in the Eastern or in the Eastern European. So yeah. Oh, and yeah, back to Berlin. I remember when I was talking all along with the tram driver during his post time for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, and then I went to check another type of tram in Berlin, and I also took a photo of the tram, and the other tram driver also asked me if I want to see the inside of the tram, and of course I couldn't deny the opportunity. So yeah, like, I don't know, they just don't get irritated by train or transportation funds that much, like in the Eastern world. Like, usually when you just take a photo of a tram or a bus or any kind of transportation vehicle, and the driver is driving meanwhile, usually, I wouldn't say most of your pictures, but there will be so many pictures when these drivers just show their middle finger to you. So yeah, it's just, I can't explain why. Just don't ask me, because I couldn't give you, I wouldn't be able to give you any kind of explanation about it. Maybe it's some, you know, nerves being triggered meanwhile growing up in the Soviet era, where usually people always just you know, to just so yeah, people were spying on each other back then, because I don't know, it's just average Soviet era. but but yeah, also I think the coupling system in America is just better, because they are stronger, so that's why you can haul a mile long or even longer freight trains on the American railroad, and that's why you usually don't see that long freight trains in Europe compared to the chain couplers or the combined couplers on passenger trains, to the usual chain couplers in Europe. Like, we still use it on modern trains, except on multiple units, because on multiple units we have this, which is called the Scharfenberg. So it's kind of similar to American couplers. You just, you know, push the two carriage or push the two multiple units together, and you are good to go. It's coupled. But the chain couplers in Europe are not as strong than the average couplers on the American trains, like on the freight trains. So yeah, that's definitely something I think we should just kind of take over in Europe, like at least the regular American coupling system or the Scharfenberg being used on multiple locomotives. Couplers were actually adapted very early on the 18th, and they have just been the standard ever since. They also make the freight cars and locomotives more resistant to rough coupling. Yeah, that's why I think Europe should use it either. So maybe we could make more traction effort on the wheels and on the tracks. Like usually trains are regulated to 300 kilonewton tractive effort, not to kind of just tear the train, like tear the chain coupling. Meanwhile in America it's just stronger, and you can give more tractive effort on the tracks with your locomotive, and I think Europe should take over this system back then. Like now I think it's too expensive to upgrade every carriage and every freight train to that system, but I think newer carriage should be built like you can change the coupling on them with just one click. Because yeah, there are some English English coaches that capable to couple with Scharfenberg and with chain couplers at the same time. And I think the other thing that would be cool, in my opinion, that using recently I saw a shunter slamming into other cars like very loud and shake the train like mad, but it never derailed because the energy is absorbed. Yeah, I mean we have also energy absorbent on European trains, so yeah, it's not a huge deal, but yeah, at the same time the American couplers are better because you don't have to tighten the chain coupling and you don't have to push the locomotive and the carriage together hardly when they coupling the locomotive or coaches together. Because if you don't tighten the chain coupling enough, it will shake the consist of the train when accelerating or decelerating. Like you will be able to feel the push of the coaches behind you when you just take the throttle back and over there and not here, like taking cars away from the locomotives and letting them roll freely. You don't have this kind of system in America for shunting or building up the consists of the train, right? So you don't let carriages or cars just rolling around without any kind of locomotive or like control. Ah, okay. Yeah, usually in Europe we use these kind of rail brakes. Like you usually put it on the rail, and when the carriage or coach just hits this kind of so yeah, we usually use it we use this kind of method to slow down the carriages. So we just let go the freight cars, and they just hit this kind of rail brakes in planted on the rail itself, and they just slide along with this, and this usually just breaks it. But we have wait, maybe I can show you on this multiple unit too if it's detailed correctly. We have a kind of yep, that's it. So usually this sign means you can't do this with this carriage or with this multiple unit. So you can just let it go and roll. And most of the coaches in Europe has this kind of sign on them. So you can just let these coaches go around. I think this we didn't ban this thing, like it's not completely banned, but I think we are getting rid of these kind of shuntings because there are some places where this kind of shunting is just completely abandoned. Like we don't use it anymore there. So we usually use proper shunting locomotives for building up consists. Well, we have the exact system as well, though it's modified a bit to make it safer. Yeah, yeah. It's always cool to make these things safer. I don't. I just can't can't trust in carriages just rolling on its own. I don't know. Maybe it's more effective to build up consists of trains, but I don't know. I like the shunting locomotive or the shunter locomotive method better because yeah, it's just safe. That's it. Okay. So yeah. Also, I aggression ticket is restricted to freight trains, only never passenger cars. Yeah, it's the same in Europe. I've never seen passenger trains being shunted like it. Sometimes they just, test these kind of hills where you usually roll down the carriages with passenger coaches. But usually there's a staff there who controls the coach itself with its handbrake and everything, just making some calculations on it, or maybe just testing the shunting heel itself to see if everything works fine, because passenger cars are more fragile. Yep. And it's because usually there are some. I think the body itself of passenger cars are more strong. I mean, they are stronger than the freight trains. Oh, it's raining. So I think it's on. It's because of the inside. Like there are so many glass panels inside of the train that's just more fragile than the windows and the body of the coach itself, because some crash tests should be made with these carriages too, and yeah, like these coaches cannot deform that much for a small impact. They have to be strong enough hold the to hold the water tank on their ceiling, because usually the water tank for the toilets are at the ceiling of the carriage. The air conditioning is either, so yeah, they are strong enough. It's so I think they only worried about the inside of the coach or car. Something that is also interesting is that you're allowed to own your own passenger car and restore it. After you do that, you can have Amtrak give it a look over, and if they approve, they will haul your passenger car on the back of their trains. Clearly, your passenger cars would use. Ah, okay, that's actually cool, because we usually don't do it in Europe. In Europe, we own, or like we own like our heritage coaches, and no one gives a heck about it. But usually the real companies restore historical coaches themselves. So yeah, it's a cool thing. Yeah, speaking of horn, the other thing I like about American trains that they always horn before crossings. I don't think it's necessary to horn before every crossing, but I like how they just horn the Morse code of the queue when they are approaching a railroad crossing. Meanwhile, in Europe, usually the trains are silent, except when there is a malfunction with the rail crossing signal itself, like the lights are out or just useless. They usually slow down to 15 kilometers per hour, which is I think it's around 5 miles per hour or maybe 7. Anyway, and no, it's actually wait. Let me. It's around maybe 10 miles per hour. Anyway, and usually they horn until they approach the railroad crossing and pass by. Also, the thing sometimes I don't understand about American trains that like why they have to turn on the bells after they sounded the horn. So I just maybe there is a regulation I just couldn't find, but usually you just hear an American train turning up the horn, and when you hear that the horn just became silent, you can hear it. The bell is just ringing for a long time. Of these the three remaining Skytop launch passenger cars and used in famous Leviki Road Hivata Express back in the 40s. Is that approved for use with Amtrak and it's absolutely gorgeous. Oh, okay, that's fine. Like, I like when people keeps old things restored and just keep a piece of history. What? Yeah, that's technically the Morse code of the queue, because technically the horn this horn means like the quarantine to quarantine the tracks from cars, and usually the last long horn should be sounded until you reach the crossing. What? Oh, okay. I think I know what's the problem. Let me. The screw could have been removed, but they kept it as an extra layer of warning. Yeah, and hey, yeah, I think it's not a bad idea to sound the horn before certain rail crossings, because at least you can hear the train is approaching. But okay, finally pizza we just let me go. So it's not a bad idea to sound the horn before certain. My God, I've traveled to Poland. How do I know? Shit, internet. Oh, wait, isn't it Germany who has bad internet connection? Like, I always hear Germans complaining about their shitty ITPs and and slow internet. But yeah, so overall, I think the American passenger trains could be better experience if Amtrak would have its own rail network across the USA and not using other freight train companies. And okay, feel free to do it. So I feel like they have a good consists of trains, especially for these longer routes, like these panorama coaches and kind of having these short breaks for the travel, and they need to fully revamp, but before they even do that, they gotta go after the freight railroads for blocking them. I mean, I don't say maybe blocking them is the solution, but I think they should build their own separate rail network across the country, or maybe they should build their own tracks next to the freight trains if the freight tracks goes through some cities that could be, you know, essential to connect with the passenger service, like they usually make it in Germany, like having at least 3 or 4 tracks together, like as I mentioned before, that having a high-speed rail. And yeah, I think the XLS could have bigger potential if they were being used in this kind of trans-American trains, like the trains between East and West Coast. Well, there is a law that Amtrak trains get priority, but the freight trains are too big for the passing sidings, so the Amtrak trains don't have a choice, or they just outright ignore the law. Yeah, yeah, I would say understandable, but I mean, yeah, they should have been prepared for these long freight trains. I mean, long freight trains are regular in America, so maybe they should just, you know, make these sidings longer. So yeah, I just don't get it why they don't expand the network and the yeah and the length of these sidings. Okay, so also I feel a bit sorry about the XLR expresses because they're just not using its own potential, like the whole potential of the train. So they both technically a high-speed train that cannot be used as a high-speed train because Amtrak doesn't have a network for the train itself to have high-speed sections of different lines where they can use the highest allowed speed of the train. So yeah, and I think it would be very expensive, but at the same time it would absolutely worth the price to, you know, electrify at least one of these lines that connects the east and west coast. So you could just run the Axel Express over there, and maybe you could make a faster service for these kind of trains. So you wouldn't have to travel for, I don't know, maybe it's up to 5 or 6 days, like traveling from New York to Los Angeles, or from Florida to the border of Canada, or to San Francisco with train. Like the scenery is cool there, but yeah, traveling with train for more than a day or 2 days, so I don't know, can so they can drive the people crazy. Like I don't know, I just wouldn't be able to sit on a train for 7 days, or maybe I would, who knows, I've never tried it before, but usually I like to spend the week at different cities, not just on a whole train. And one of my friends just mentioned that we could travel to Berlin with train, but it would take a day. Like we would get on at 9 a.m. or 8 maybe, like yeah, around 8 a.m. and we would arrive at Berlin at 6 p.m. So, and I said, okay, you know what, let's just travel by plane. It's a bit more expensive, but at the same time you don't just waste your time sitting on a train and not doing anything useful. But the other thing I just don't understand in American people, when they they travel short distance by plane, another city to the next city on the map. Like maybe it's because the distance or the trains are actually that bad. And I like how passenger trains in America sometimes like they look a bit goofy when they have a aerodynamic locomotive at the end of the train, but on the other end there is a flat control cab. So it feels like the whole train is just reversing backwards. Like usually in Europe we have kind of like control cabs that tries to tries to look like they are actually locomotives, but no, they are don't, or tries to look like multiple units. Meanwhile, at the other end there is another locomotive to push and pull the whole consist of the train. So yeah, sometimes they look a bit goofy for me, but maybe that's just me. Like for Europeans, usually the American trains will look strange. I think it's not usually. I think most of the Europeans looks at an American passenger train and they think it's okay. It's kind of goofy, but at the same time, maybe for Americans, European trains are weird and and just looks way different than what they usually used to. Even if they have so many things that's just kind of imported from Europe for their passenger service, like the Axela train. That's still a TGV, no matter what they say. So yeah.